Hi there, and welcome to my channel that I still call, excuse me, work in progress. That I'll probably always call work in progress as we kind of watch this channel evolve. However, I am still very much of the mindset that I want to be able to have conversations with everyday people just like you and me about our journey in this lifetime, about the stories that we can share with one another that may include challenges, breakthroughs, difficulties, a whole gamut. Because I truly believe that by sharing our stories with one another, we help others. This helps us move through this evolutionary process that we're currently in. So I'm putting out an alert, call it that today. If this idea inspires you, my contact information is below this video. So connect with me and let's see if we couldn't make this idea happen where we will just, you and I, have a conversation about whatever it is that you would like to share. And, when you contact me, we'll talk about it first and then set a date to record. Okie dokie. So I'm going to call this video, this is part 2 of the video right before it, which I'll call part 1. And that video, the title of it is You're Never Upset for the Reason You Think. And when I did that video, which was just yesterday, but by the time I publish it, it'll be a few days later, I was upset. I was upset because our power went out again. Like for the last couple weeks, it's gone out on Tuesday. How does that happen? Because we have these horrific storms that are happening right now in the Bay Area, and San Francisco Bay Area. And I didn't think that the power was going to go out in that last video that I did. Because we weren't having the winds and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I had my mindset that, we'd have our power, which means I have internet. So when that power went out, just about the time I was going to start recording, I was upset. And I'd already decided that I was going to do a video about we're never upset for the reason we think. So generally, I know kind of what I'm going to be talking about before I start a video. I don't really have a script or anything like that, so I just let it flow. So anyway, that was yesterday, and I did a shorter video. And what's funny is the power came back on much sooner than it has in the past. We were only out for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 hours, something like that, maybe less. But anyway, during that power outage, when everything was out, I did observe myself as I was watching, and this is where the storm got pretty nasty. I was watching the wind blow, thinking our fence was going to blow down, and it was a rather horrific storm. But I really then, as it calmed down, I calmed down and started to really look deeper into this whole idea of we're never upset for the reason we think. So, and I talked about what I kind of came up with during this upset of this weather, meaning it interrupted what I had planned. So I won't go into that because that's on the last video. So what I did want to do, though, is be really clear about how this idea works, that we're never upset for the reason we think. Now, this is from the Course in Miracles. This is one of the lessons, and it's a lesson that is a really, really important lesson to keep in mind, and not an easy one to get right away. A number of years ago, many years ago, when I was doing the Course in Miracles, I really didn't quite get what that meant. Whatever I got was at the level that I was at the moment. It wasn't that I didn't accept that idea, but I really thought it was more about just accepting what happens on face value and not getting upset. Now, today, I definitely know the reason we're never upset for the reason we think is because we don't get upset for things that happen outside of ourselves. We don't. We don't get upset for that. What happens is whatever it is that's happening in the outer world and the external world, if we're going to get upset, it's because we already have a trigger inside of us that is being triggered for whatever is going on out there. So it's not really what's going on out there. It's more about it triggers something. So a lot of things can be going on in our outer world, but we're not triggered. It's not upsetting. It's just what it is, so to speak, or it's okay, or I don't know, it doesn't bother us. That's why oftentimes you could have a friend that isn't bothered at all, in the same way you are. Or even your spouse isn't bothered in the same way you are, or vice versa. I certainly have that with my husband. So that is the situation with you're never upset for the reason you think, because it already has to be a trigger. And what is a trigger? That is something that typically we're going to grow up with in childhood. It's a belief. It's some sort of conditioning. It's some sort of way of believing in what's right and what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's happy, what's sad, those kinds of things. So it's something that we develop as we're young, and carry with us, and it kind of gets buried somewhere. And every time something happens that is similar to what this trigger is, or this wound, we could call it. It could be like a wound or a trauma that happened to us. Anytime that appears to be happening in the outer world, we're getting upset as if it's happening in that moment with that situation. But all that it's doing is showing a light, we could say, or a spotlight on what's really going on in our internal world, because that's all that's going on is the internal world. So what is that offers us is the opportunity to really do a self-inquiry and discover, what is it that this is triggering? Why am I feeling so upset? And if you can dig deep enough, you're going to find that, because this thing went on for me, and now I'm triggered. But what I want to make clear is, once you get triggered and you see where it's coming from, it doesn't mean that you just accept it, or you become a doormat, or you become a victim. It's none of that. The first step is understanding that we all have these triggers, and they all are based from what we grew up with, what we learned from our parents, from our teachers, from all the things that influenced our particular environment. Those are triggers that are within us. Now, it doesn't mean that every trigger we've ever had is still within us. We could have, through different processes, maybe, as we've grown through the spirit, if we've been a spiritual seeker, which probably anybody is that's listening to this channel, then we could have, through those years, released some triggers that, well, they're no longer triggers. So that same thing could happen in the outer world, and we just would be no biggie, no big deal, okay? However, let's say, that we get a trigger on emotional abuse. Somebody out in the outer world is being emotionally abusive toward you. You go within and do the self-inquiry, and you discover that, I'll give an example in my case, my mother was emotionally abusive. Not just my mother, but other people in the family, but mostly her. Mostly it was her that was most often doing this emotional abuse toward me. So if somebody is emotionally abusive, I'm going to get triggered. But not because they're just triggering, showing the light on what's going on. But let me take that a step further. Again, that doesn't mean that it's acceptable. The other thing that can happen is, with these triggers, we oftentimes do attract, we could call it similar personalities to our triggers. It's like it's an attraction. It's again this energetic thing that's going on. So again, I'll use myself as an example. So I grow up with this emotional abuse. In those days, they didn't call it emotional abuse. I don't know what they called it, but today it is called that. And so I end up with a marriage that was emotionally abusive. And it took me many, many years to recognize this pattern that I had and to, you know, get out of that situation basically. But initially, I was used to being emotionally abused, so it's kind of a normal thing, I guess, or a normal way of somebody behaving toward me. So it took me a while, too long in a way, but until I could, really understand that, I was in that situation. So when we have these triggers, let's just keep using this example of emotionally being abused. That doesn't mean that we accept it and from that outer situation. Not at all. It means we either have to move away from it, meaning, drop the friendship, whatever it is. It could mean that you could possibly have a conversation with the individual who you're feeling is emotionally abusing you, and maybe they don't realize what they're doing, and maybe that's something that could be worked through. At the same time, we always know you can't change somebody else, but this may be more of the person just didn't realize. So there's that option. There's many, many options to it, but what I want to be clear is don't use that as a place to become a victim or a doormat to a particular behavior. And this is across the board, whatever it is that you tend to have a pattern in. Another pattern is people pleasing. That's one of mine as well. And so when we start to have a relationship with an outer, in the now time, then this can get triggered. But again, before it actually gets triggered, we are attracting that relationship. We're attracting that because that's a trigger within us. And once we begin and to recognize what's going on, because we can dig down and see where this pattern began of people pleasing, then again, we can do something about that. We may need to end a relationship, or perhaps there's a possibility to, have a conversation with whoever this is happening with, and that could shift. It's probably not, because in order to have people pleasing, it really takes two to tango, so to speak. In anything it does, just like the emotional abuse, meaning it takes two to tango. So the person that has the problem of being a people pleaser will then attract a person that is a manipulative in some way and has that energy of drawing a person in who is that people pleaser. And so it's like I said, it takes two to tango. So the other person has another pattern, and the two kind of come together like a magnet. And until we begin to really recognize all of these different issues, triggers in our lives, then we will attract these things one way or another. But again, it comes down to really looking within and understanding that this was a trauma that happened to us. It's a wound, or, it was a way of being within a particular environment that we grew up in. And so, this is why oftentimes, there's a pattern that can happen that we don't even recognize. Oftentimes they say if you were like physically abused or that, then you could become a physical abuser as well, because you're not aware of the trigger that this was offering. So you start to become that. It's not 100% like that. It's not that if you if you had a physical abuser in your life, that you're definitely going to become a physical abuser. No, but you could attract one, because again, it's that attraction thing. So this is why you want to look within. It's really, really important that we begin to always look within through self-inquiry and to see a pattern. And they're typically unconscious. So when we go within and really start to question, what is this about, and start to kind of do a little digging, we have to get to the root of the problem. Like, if you're removing weeds out of your garden, you want to get to the root, or it just keeps coming back. And so this takes some determination and some discipline and some willingness to kind of feel the pain around something like this. But it is so worthwhile when we actually get it, when we actually understand it, then we remove it. It's removed forever, right? So I wanted to be clear, because I think that this whole thing on we're never upset for the reason we think, and for this whole thing about how triggers work, there can be a misunderstanding, meaning that maybe we resist it because we say, I'm not going to become a doormat. No, you shouldn't become a doormat. That's not the idea. Or maybe we do become like a victim because we're not recognizing where this began. In my last video, I talked about it's a teacher, spiritual teacher, that has been talking about how he's always been blamed for things he never did. But I don't think he's dug in to completely understand where did that trigger come from, and where did that wound come from. Because if we don't get it, if we don't figure it out, then that pattern keeps going on and on, right? It just does. There was a video about this also with a teacher interviewing this woman that has worked on this idea of triggers or patterns that we have and how unconscious they are. And she has some sort of a technique that can help open up that unconscious part of the mind. Anyway, the person, the host actually, that that was interviewing her, he agreed, wanted to, in fact, expose a pattern that he had. So he has a pattern of constantly getting injured, badly injured. I mean, he's a pro athlete, or was, and he, however, would always have these injuries. I think he said I think he's in his early 50s right now, and he's had 36, I think, operations, pretty major operations, from all of the broken bones and injuries and all the stuff that's happened to him through the years. And what came out of that is there was where it began was as a young child. He didn't feel that he was ever getting noticed or cared in a way for as a child. He wasn't getting attention that he wanted, except when he would get injured. Then, he'd be in the hospital, and he would then, let's say, I think he mentioned where he badly broke a leg, and he was young, I think under teenage years. And so he got some great things, great toys that he wanted to help him through this recovery, and to help him have the patience, whatever he had to have to let this leg heal. So there's a real simple understanding. I mean, it's not simple, but to understand that, he wasn't getting attention except when he got hurt. So that happened through his childhood and continues today at 50. I think he's 51 years old. It's quite amazing when we look at it. So now he's going to work with this woman to try to break this pattern. But one of the ways also of breaking this pattern is through self-inquiry, which he'll go through some of that, because he's already figured out the situation. Now he has to kind of look a little deeper to see his behavior, to see how he really thinks of himself, you know. So it's not just simple always, yet it is. But for most of us, I think when we dig in and really understand where did this begin, the root of the problem, and then we become aware of how a pattern in our life is continuing, and then we become aware of what it is that's causing us to keep this pattern in place, and there's some sort of belief under that that says I don't deserve anything better. I don't deserve to be noticed in his case, or it could be, I don't deserve to be treated with respect. These are thoughts within ourselves, so it has nothing to do with what you're telling the outer world to do for you. That's not going to work. It works only where we have to look deep, like what is it that what is it? Why don't I have respect for myself to not be emotionally abused? You know? And so these are the things, for instance, this emotionally abused issue that I have, these are the ways that I've been able to work through this, is to be able to really look within myself to see why I feel that it's okay, in a way, which it's not, or to be emotionally abused, or why do I feel I don't deserve. Self-love is really what it comes down to. You know, when we talk about self-love, it's very meaningful, because when we really can love or respect or care for ourselves, be kind to ourselves, then these blocks can be removed. It's an ongoing, for me anyway, and I think for most, it's an ongoing practice. Oftentimes it feels like, you peel away one piece of the puzzle, of the onion, let's say, and then another onion shows up. But this is all for the purpose of really being able to wake up out of this illusion and to live life from a different point of view, from a different vibration, from a different understanding, in a way, not intellectually understanding, but emotionally understanding. So it is a work in progress itself, right? But again, it's not something that can be done overnight. It's not something that can be, I think it's really a lifetime journey. But the more that we can unravel, unpack, and reveal our particular blocks and our particular beliefs and release those, then the easier, more joyful, really, our life can become. And I happen to find this whole thing pretty intriguing. I find it fascinating how we really do operate here as spirits having a human experience. And I do strongly also believe, we do come in with a particular purpose, a particular mission, some people call it. If you happen to listen to near-death experiencers, I do quite a lot, because those intrigue me, then you kind of get a better insight into all of this. In other words, this is where so many, at least those that are recording or being interviewed, come back with a whole new understanding of who they are and what they're to do and kind of what this life's really about. So again, I find it kind of it really pulls me toward really looking deeper and deeper within myself, and to, God, it's so surprising and so amazing. The more I kind of focus, I think it's focus on this, the more aware I can become, the more it's like, whoa, really? Why didn't I see this before? So I think we have to really have a desire is the word, probably, to unfold and dig and discover the truth of who we really are through this self-inquiry, because that's where it all is. There's nothing outside of ourselves. It's all inside. It's from inside out, we could say. And then life becomes a really interesting journey. It becomes one where you can kind of sit back at times and go, wow, now I see how that happened, and or wow, now I see why I'm struggling with this. And it's such a relief, really. It's a relief of energy when we can sense these things. All of a sudden we gain energy because we've released all the crap that's taking up the energy, right? So it's not like you have to get crazed or insanely disciplined over this. There's a balancing act, because we still have to, navigate life. We still have life going on. We still have ways that we're needing to be responsible and do things and so forth. So it's basically an everyday awareness. It's really what it is. And you kind of have to find that balance within yourself. I find myself throughout the day, and sometimes, at night if I wake up and I'm not sleeping, to really keep exploring this, but not to the degree that it's nothing else can enter my world. But again, it's to me, it's a very energizing experience to go through this, even though at times it can be very painful, as I'm letting some of these past energies out. It's an uncomfortable feeling in the body. Plus, right now, as we are all going through this evolutionary process, there's a lot of energies just happening out there, right? It's just a ton of different energies, and it's all through our body. Our body is what's really going through this evolution. And so we're all having those experiences, whether we realize it or not. It's taking up a lot of energy and can be very uncomfortable, yet it's what we need to do. So, in the scheme of things, we're all going through this in some way or another. However, many of us probably just aren't aware, and that's okay too. But those of us that are aware and see this as an evolutionary process and want to contribute in a positive way toward it, then then we need to come forward with our own practice. You don't have to do anything on YouTube. You don't have to do anything other than become aware in your own practice, right? So when we look at one another and start to even judge one another, this is a good time to become aware, It's like there's so many opportunities out there that come up many times in a day to help us remember who we really are and, live from that truth of who we really are, which are spirits having a human experience. As a collective group out there, there's not one size fits all. Everybody on a global basis is going through their own experiences. And depending where they are in their lifetime, there's the beginning, the middle, and the end, just to simplify it. So people are on different levels. So somebody who's just beginning life is at one level, and the absolutely extreme level of that is somebody that's in the dying process. And so a bunch of stuff in between, right? So that's the other thing we can look at, is where are we on that spectrum as well. Yeah, so there's lots of ways to look at this, but my main message, hopefully I didn't lose this in all my other talking here, is to really understand that when you go through this process of you're never upset for the reason you think, it doesn't mean that you become a doormat or you become a victim, right? There's common sense that has to happen with this as well. So I hope this makes sense, and I definitely hope this helps someone to better understand it. But I do want to encourage you, I really, really want to encourage you to really look at, because it's so there all the time, look at the times that you feel upset, that you notice. First of all, you have to become aware, but depending on the level of upset, the more you're upset, sometimes it's the harder one to become aware of. Regardless, kind of set an intention to become aware of why you're upset. And then remember that lesson. You're never upset for the reason you think, which sends you right to the to do the inquiry, the self-inquiry, and begin to look deeper as to why am I upset over this. And you're going to miss a bunch in doing it. Maybe you're going to look back and say, oh, now I can see what I did. I didn't see it at the time. So what? That's okay. And believe me, your guides are helping you. They're shining the light on what your triggers are right now, big time for all of us. Our triggers are being absolutely exposed, because that is the way that we can release and move on into this, through this evolution. So again, I hope this made sense on some level, on enough levels so you can get it to some degree. And I hope it helps somebody. And try it out. I really want to encourage you to just give it a shot. I know for me, that lesson, you're never upset for the reason you think, has started to stick with me years ago and has really been a helpful reminder when I'm upset. Not 100% of the time, for sure, but enough of the time that I can really be motivated to look a little deeper. So maybe that can help you as well. Anyway, I'd love to hear your comments, what you think about this idea, or maybe what you've learned about your own being upset, examples. Any thoughts that you have would be great to hear. I also want to remind you, if you would like to have a conversation with me about your particular story in your life journey, then don't forget to look below for my contact information and make contact with me. I'll get right back with you, and let's see what we can make happen from there. A little reminder, if you like this video, please click like. Also, there's a subscribe button, so do subscribe. And if you want to know when the videos are being published, there's a little doodad next to subscribe button, the button doodad. Click on that and you'll know when a new video's up. So until then, until next time, do be kind to yourself. I say this every time because I'm really working on that. Just seems often it's easier to be kind to someone else other than ourselves. And I think, again, it's really important that we are at this time learning to really be kind to ourselves, to appreciate ourselves, and to even love ourselves, right? So hopefully you're working on that as well. So until next time, take care, and we'll see you soon. And here I'm with my clicker again. Here's what's weird. I can click it on when I'm going to click it on in one click. When I go to click it off, I have this thing in my head that says, I don't know why. Maybe I can't click it off in one shot. So let's give it a try today. I need to not be trying to control this, right? Let it happen. Okay, guys. See you next time.